No? Well, let's kick this thing off. Very good morning, everybody. Quite an impressive amount of press colleagues here, so thank you all for coming, and very good of you that you could actually find the entrance to the building here. You must be more familiar than we did, because we spent about 15 minutes trying to find it this morning. So that's very heartening to see so many of you here today. I'll just run quickly through the program here and a couple of household announcements, and then get started with the presentation. As household introductions regards, there's a couple of exits in the room here. I'm being a pilot, so I'll always talk about safety issues. Emergency exits, one in the back, and there's also the lavatories, or the toilets are somewhere in the corridor, and there is a exit here behind us as well, where most of you entered, of course. Coffee and hopefully tea and some other drinks, and just a few bits are in the hallway. And then I would like to get started in introducing the people here behind the table, if that's okay with you. And I would like to start to my very right. Captain John Goss. He was the very first Ryanair pilot to be elected into the council of the Ryanair Pilot Group. And you all probably know what his position is at this moment. We will be talking briefly about that during the presentation as well. On my right here, First Officer Sam Giesendenner, and he is a colleague from SNPL France Alpa, which I've known for many years already. I'm very pleased to have him on the team as well. On my left, Captain Ted Murphy, a distinguished ex-president of the International Federation of Airline Pilots Associations, among very many other things. You will find some bios of all of us in the press pack. My name is Erik van Zol. I'm the chairman of the interim council of the Ryanair Pilot Group, and I will be talking you through the presentation today. I would like to start off with the presentation, trying to make it relatively short, hopefully about 20 minutes or so. That is just a guesstimate, I would say, but I'll try to go through it rather quickly. And then I would like to ask you to save your questions until afterwards, and when we come to the question and answer session. First thing I would like to draw your attention to, you probably saw it already, we are very, very proud of having our new website just launched very, very recently. And the nice thing about our new website is that it will greatly improve our communication skills with the pilots in Ryanair, which you may or may not know are spread out over very, very many countries in Europe and over very, very many bases all over Europe. So communication is always a very big challenge for us. And this new website will greatly improve our method of communicating with them. And what is even more heartwarming, I think, is that it's been built by Ryanair pilots for Ryanair pilots, as many other Ryanair pilots are working in the background of the council in this project of the Ryanair Pilot Group. The Ryanair Pilot Group is all about professional treatment for professional pilots in its broadest sense. Pilot professional associations, organizations throughout the world are focusing on many issues. Industrial issues, contract issues are only one of them. The other ones will be safety and technical issues. Today we will be speaking about the RPG, the history of the Ryanair Pilot Group, where it came from, where it is presently. We are going to try to bust some myths about Ryanair pilots, and we will put a lot of emphasis today on employment issues of the Ryanair pilots, and then at the end we will finish up with the question and answer session. Ryanair is always talking about two different kinds of pilots within that company, and they will be talking about employee pilots and contractor pilots. We will explain the differences between those two categories of pilots later, but we would just like to state a couple of facts where the RPG is today. The RPG today represents well over 50% of the employee pilots, and also well over 50% of the contractor pilots. And that means that we represent over 50%, I would really like to say well over 50% of all pilots flying in Ryanair. And we don't think that pilots are that different. If they have different contracts, that could be one thing. But the pilots have one thing in common, and all pilots in Ryanair have this in common, that they fly Ryanair airplanes from A to B, and they do it in a safe and professional way. So today we are announcing, as we have done for quite some time, that we most definitely represent well over 50% of all Ryanair pilots. A lot of questions have been raised about the Ryanair Pilot Group. What is it? Who's leading it? What's the setup? Where is it going to? Where does it come from? Just a quick background, a quick history of where this all started. About 2 years ago, really. It was established by pilots flying for Ryanair who were members of the Irish Pilots Association, the Irish Airline Pilots Association. And quite quickly, the IALPA engaged with colleague organizations within Europe through the European Cockpit Association, and asking for some logistical support and also some financial support to really start a project to go and meet the Ryanair pilots through social media, but most importantly also through very, very many base visits. We have been visiting, I would dare to say, all bases of Ryanair, and we have been speaking to literally hundreds of Ryanair pilots, and we have been asking them, what are your concerns, what are your issues, where would you like to go, and most importantly, would you like to be organizing yourselves into a pilot professional association? Because pilots are used to organize themselves in these kinds of associations. And that is what I would say the RPG is today. It's a pilot professional association in development. It's not there yet, it's not where it's going to be eventually. We have to adapt to the very complicated situation of Ryanair, where all these pilots are spread out all over Europe in very many countries and over very, very many base stations. The RPG was necessary, we felt, through the talks with the Ryanair pilots to address the deterioration of the terms and conditions, and also to the fact that the what we call the representation system of Ryanair, the ERC system, just doesn't work for the pilots and it fails to present them in a proper way. When we set up the Ryanair Pilot Group, we felt it was necessary to have a group of people leading the RPG, at least for an interim phase. And it's very, how to say this, the pilots in Ryanair are expressing that they have fears to be standing up and putting their names on ballot papers to stand up for elections for a council of the Ryanair Pilot Group. And that is a fact of life. We have to live with that for the time being. So we have the group of people here behind the table, we have stood up and said, if necessary, we will step in for an interim period and help the Ryanair pilots to get organized and to make structures like we know them. We are here to mentor and support the Ryanair pilots, and sooner rather than later, we should have significant numbers of Ryanair pilots who would be able to step up to these positions. And that is at least our wish. A couple of myths. We have asked the Ryanair pilots again, because this is our modus operandi. We are not talking on behalf of ourselves, we are talking on behalf of the Ryanair pilots, and we have asked them in the internal discussion forums to come up with issues that they feel that need to be busted. The myths need to be busted, the record needs to be set straight. And we have today chosen to pick 3 of those myths and tell you the real facts as we see. Myth number 1 is, as the Chief Executive of Ryanair has said very recently on a YouTube video that he posted on YouTube, is that the training in Ryanair for cabin crew and pilots is provided by Ryanair free of charge. The facts state differently. If you are a young trainee first officer and you are joining Ryanair, you are expected to pay up front for your type rating, which is the conversion course for the type of aircraft that you will be flying, an amount of 28,500 euros. You will have to pay it up front in cash. Maybe you can use a credit card too, I don't know. Knowing Ryanair, there will probably be a fee involved if you use a credit card. And so that's a significant amount of money. And please remember that these young people are coming out of flight schools with extremely high debt burden already. 100,000 euros or more is quite common for them. But it doesn't stop there. They will also pay for their initial line training, the amounts you will see on the screen. And if they choose to leave Ryanair within a certain time, they will also have to pay back quite significant amounts of money. But also during your career, and especially as a contractor pilot, this continues. You will be paying the amounts, there are approximately 3,500, 3,600 euros per year to meet the cost of your recurrent simulator trainings at what they call a reduced rate per block hour. So they are, in fact, paying for their own training and their recurrent training. Myth number 2 is the quite often used quote of the CEO of Ryanair, is that pilots are the most underworked group of people in the world, and that they only work 18 hours a week. It seems that the CEO has missed a very important difference, namely the difference between flight time, the time that the aircraft actually moves, versus working time or duty time, as we call it. And if you just assume that a Ryanair pilot would be flying around 825 hours of flight time per year, then you would have to add significant extra amounts of time for pre- and post-flight duties, 45 minutes before the flight, 30 minutes after the flight, at least 25 minutes per turnaround after each flight. And for standby, pilots will be sitting waiting to be called for their flights up to 12 hours a day, and sometimes up to several days a week. Simulator and other training is not included in that amount of hours as well. And if pilots are not living in the base that they are assigned to, and remember they can be changed from one base to another within just a matter of days, you will also have to add the time that they will be spending on commuting back and from their place of work to their homes. And if you add all these up, then you will find that pilots in Ryanair don't work 18 hours a week, but that they will on average work about 36 to 42 hours a week, and they will do this in the time bracket of roughly between 5 o'clock in the early morning until very late in the evening, early next morning at about 1 a.m. So that's quite comparable to what the EU average full-time working people would do, which comes out to 41.6 hours a week. Myth number 3, and that is probably, I'm probably taking some of your questions here already. Ryanair's claim that the RPG consists of pilots from competitor airlines and does not represent the pilots in Ryanair. There's a couple of things that we have very clearly to state here. There are no pilots from any other airline registered as members of the RPG, and the RPG consists solely of pilots flying for Ryanair who have registered with the RPG. It's very important to make a distinction between the Ryanair Pilot Group and us being the interim council of the Ryanair Pilot Group. And we are the democratically elected officers representing the Ryanair pilots, because with everything we do, we will ask the pilots through a balloting system, is this what you want, yes or no? What are your priorities? And it's the pilots who are steering us and not the other way around. If you look at my personal situation, yes, I am a KLM pilot too in my other life, but in this life I am the chairman of the Ryanair Pilot Group. In my previous position as the president of the Dutch Pilot Association, I had several pilots of several airlines in that association, and those airlines would be competing against each other in the marketplace on a daily basis, which is all right. Another example, if you look at my colleague from the British Airline Pilots Association, he is an EasyJet pilot, and the pilots of British Airways, for instance, and many other airlines are also members of that same association. And as you all know, these airlines are competing fiercely in the marketplace. So that is quite a normal situation. And once again, I would like nothing more than to have a Ryanair pilot step up to the plate and say, I'm ready to take over your position now, please. And I would be the first one to switch sides and be on the background and mentoring him or her in that sense, and not being on the forefront again. But again, this unfortunately is a situation which we'll have to live with for some time in the foreseeable future. So we have asked the pilots to bring up a couple of myths, and they are really bothered by these stories, that because until now really, or until very recently, the pilots in Ryanair didn't have a collective voice. They couldn't defend themselves against the accusations made against them by the company. And now with the Ryanair Pilot Group, they finally have this voice, and we would be very proud of conveying this message from the pilots to the public. And we could, as far as I'm concerned, say that a couple of these myths of Ryanair have been busted, and we have set the record straight. Main topic of today, the employment issues. Actually, very few people know all the details of how this employment model of Ryanair really works. We don't know all the details of it too, but we do have a quite clear picture by now what the essence of it is. Again, remember that this is a company that is spread out over very, very many countries in Europe. It has to deal with very many different set of rules regarding taxes, labor laws, and what have you. And if you then look at the, and we touched upon this earlier already, the contractor status of very, very many pilots of Ryanair. We'll come to the percentages quite soon. Here is the general model how this works. On the left-hand side of the screen, you will see what pilots are doing. They are flying their aircraft from A to B and back. That is the red line. And they provide that service directly to Ryanair. But you see there's a whole bunch of intermediate steps before eventually the pilot gets paid for their service that they provide directly to Ryanair. And on the right-hand side, you could very simplify and say this is where the money flows back to the pilots. Now, if we look at a little bit more detail, this money flows through very many different layers of companies, from the airline Ryanair to UK-based agencies. Then there's Irish accountants involved. The pilots are asked to set up Irish limited companies. There will be a group of pilots who will be in those limited companies. Quite often these pilots will not know who the other pilots are that are in these limited companies. And everywhere there is a fee involved. So there's a lot of people benefiting from the system before the money eventually ends up where the pilot has been providing the services directly to Ryanair. And the question is, why is this necessary? Because there is no real difference between an employee pilot, the simple form of an employee pilot providing the same services to Ryanair as does a contractor pilot. Because here we have the two employment models side to side. On the left hand side, the simple, traditional, I would like to say, employer-employee relationship, direct line between two. You fly the airplane, you get a monthly salary back for that service. And on the right hand side, as you see, and the percentages are there as well, it's over 72% of all pilots in Ryanair are in this contractor model. And the big question is why? Why is it necessary? And one of the things that we have established is there's a lot of implications for the pilots, who are, especially the ones who are in the right hand side, but also pilots on the left hand side have their issues. And we now have a quite clear picture of the issues of the pilots, and also of their priorities on what they would like to see in the future. Here's just some examples of the implications for pilots of the employment model that they are in. I'm not going to name off all of them. You can see them on the screen. The presentation is also included in your briefing pack there. But I would just, for instance, name the employee implication. And there is a discretionary sick pay system in Ryanair, which is something that we would really like to talk about with the company and try to solve for them. And if you look at the two first bullets for the contractors, and especially the combination of the two, no security of employment and 0-hour contracts, that will leave a very, very uncertain situation for them indeed. Traditionally, we have again asked the pilots, and this is getting repetitive, and we have asked Ryanair pilots to come up with their priorities. Make a list of priorities that you would like us to come up with in hopefully future negotiations with the company. And what are your priorities of the issues to be fixed and or to be negotiated? And out of this longer list of issues, they have come up with a list of 13, and I'll just show the top 5 issues here on the screen. The first one, and that was a very, very clear victory, I would almost like to say, is that they are looking for a common basic contract for all pilots, and that is priority number 1 once we get to sit down with the company and discuss this. The number 2, and this is an interesting issue too, I think, the resolution of all individual tax issues where speaking to many Ryanair pilots, this always comes up during the discussions. They are very concerned about the implications of local tax revenue services knocking on their doors, doing searches in their homes, and people actually getting checks from local tax offices for amounts adding up to tens of thousands of euros per year of taxes to be repaid. Number 3, which many of us would feel as a normal system, a transparent and fair annual leave system. They are looking for a system where they can actually request leave, for instance, in summer where they work really hard, and they would like to have some time off during that very intensive time of the year too, and it has to be transparent and fair. Same goes for a transparent and effective base transfer system. These pilots have in their contracts that they can be transferred to another base in Europe, sometimes even in a matter of days. And that is something that you could easily also describe in a good contract, a good, fair and equitable way of handling those issues. And number 5, and you have to remember that this is a survey we did in early 2013, so long before all the legal stuff that's going on these days. The pilots in Ryanair put very high up on their priority list that any colleague threatened, disciplined or sanctioned in the course of establishing this new representation process should be fully reinstated before any disputes will be resolved. And this is something that has come up from themselves once again. Our conclusion is the pilots have given us a clear mandate of their priorities, and we are ready to engage the company, and we have let them know already in the past that we are ready to engage and talk to them. I would like now to show you a couple of times a short clip, a recent clip of the chief executive of Ryanair. And I think the sound quality is relatively well, but it may be needed to try to be as quiet as possible.
You have to have a majority of the Ryanair pilots telling us that. Well, if it would be about having about 1,601 Ryanair pilots, then yeah, look, the Ryanair pilots do have alternatives here.
In case you didn't hear it, I'll just again.
You have to have a majority of the Ryanair pilots telling us that. Well, if it would be about having about 1,601 Ryanair pilots, then yeah, look, the Ryanair pilots do have alternatives here.
Well, I would say thank you very much to the CEO of Ryanair, because we do represent well in excess of these 1,601 pilots, and we accept his invitation. We will, and you will find it also in your briefing packs, we will send today an open letter to the Chief Executive of Ryanair, asking him to engage in meaningful discussions and negotiations with the Ryanair Pilot Group. And I do expect, especially since we are seeing recently the new and more soft and cuddlier Ryanair, then I do expect to see a positive answer on that question. You see 4 people behind the table. You will probably know that we had 5 people in the interim council initially. Captain Karl Kowitsky of Southwest Airlines unfortunately had to withdraw for personal reasons. He remains involved with the work we're doing, and we have been in very close contact with our friends in Southwest Airlines for a relatively long time already, because there are quite some similarities between the 2 companies, Ryanair and Southwest Airlines. And I would just like to take a very short time to read out the statement here of the president of SWAPA. As one of the leading pilot labor groups in the world, the Southwest Airline Pilots Association, SWAPA, has long supported the right of each pilot group to organize their efforts under respective countries' laws. It is with dismay that we have watched from afar the struggles of the Ryanair Pilot Group to organize and be recognized by Ryanair. This is especially troubling as Ryanair has stated that they are the Southwest of Europe. In fact, they are not. Southwest Airlines recognized SWAPA without going through the laborious process of organizing as a labor union in the United States many years ago. And today, even though we may not always agree, Southwest Airlines and SWAPA work together on all issues that affect the careers of our pilots and strengthen our airline. Our hope is that the Ryanair pilots will ultimately be recognized and be able to negotiate all matters of their careers. SWAPA pilots wish nothing but the best of luck to the pilots of Ryanair. Signed, Captain Mark Richardson, SWAPA President. Very happy with the statement, and it reflects the kind of a relationship we would like to have with Ryanair as well. We would like to engage in fruitful and meaningful discussions with them and trying to improve the airline and make sure that all stakeholders in the airline get their fair share of that airline's prosperity. The major topic of this press conference, as far as we're concerned, was contracts and the employment situation. Before you bring up these questions, because I know these questions will be coming up, we have seen that there is a vortex of legal action currently being taken against organization and also against individuals. Some of them are on both sides of the table as we speak. And this is all in relationship to Ryanair. We are not going to play that game with Ryanair. We have been given very, very strong legal advice not to discuss safety issues at this press conference, and we intend to follow that advice. And I ask you for your understanding if we cannot answer your questions regarding those safety issues. I would now like to ask John to make a short personal statement about himself. John? I switch it off, John. Sorry.
Well, as many of you, in fact probably all of you, are well aware, I am involved in a number of very serious court proceedings at present. And I have been strongly advised that those proceedings must be conducted within the confines of the court. So unfortunately, it would not be appropriate at this time for me to discuss matters which will ultimately require determination by judge and jury, and I do not intend to do so. I would like to say that I am very, very grateful and proud to say that I have unwavering support from my fellow pilots in Ryanair and across the globe, and also to acknowledge the support that I received from my wife and my family. I believe that the RyanairPilotGroup has a very positive role to play in the future of Ryanair and our industry. And I look forward to being part of that future.
Thank you very much, John. And I would like to open the floor for questions. Gentleman in front.
Does the RPG have any right under Irish law to be recognised if it has a majority representation?
As far as I know, not being a legal person, there are quite few countries in Europe which have that direct representation rights. I know that in the Netherlands there is no such thing, and I would expect that there is no such thing in Ireland. I know there's something in the UK which, if you have 50% or more, then you would be recognised. And yeah, what I could do is quote from a previous Supreme Court decision in Ireland, where they have said something about this issue, and I will just quote it because I think it clearly states where the difficulties lie and where the challenges are. They said, "It is not in dispute that as a matter of law, Ryanair is perfectly entitled not to deal with trade unions, nor can a law be passed compelling it to do so." But then there is a second sentence, which is quite often forgotten, which reads, "There is an obvious danger, however, in a non-unionized company that employees may be exploited and may have to submit to what most reasonable people would consider to be grossly unfair terms and conditions of employment." And that is a quote from the Irish Supreme Court. So no, there is no direct recognition, but looking at the statement which I played on video before, and the fact that we are saying that we have a majority of the Ryanair pilots involved, there would be no obstacle, as far as we're concerned, to engage Ryanair, and we are making use of our rights as described in the European Convention of Human Rights in Article 11, the free association rights. And here we are. Does that answer your question?
Thank you, yes.
Next question, please.
How can you prove that you have more than half of them yourself? Do you have a list? How did you actually collate that? And you've got to be able to show that in a tangible way.
Well, you don't have to be able to show it. I think the swapper statement, maybe it's a decision taken by the company whether to engage or not in actions. We are ready to engage. We would like to engage. We would like to have engaged yesterday. We are ready to engage today or tomorrow. And we are, and make no mistake about it, we are well over that 50% threshold, and we are willing and able to prove it and have it validated by independent experts. So there's no hiding of facts. It is a sensitive issue, so it's the protection of the individuals involved that are members or are registered with the RPG is very foremost in our minds too. But we are willing to validate that statement at any given time.
Would you, for example, on taking the same question further, if Michael O'Leary asked you to supply a list of names of RPG members, would you do that?
The answer is no. Any other questions?
Can you tell me something more? You mentioned in your presentation about these fears of Ryanair pilots have about standing up. Can you tell us anything more about that? Can you amplify that?
As I said, we are talking to very many Ryanair pilots on an almost daily basis. We have people working behind the scenes. We have Ryanair pilots supporting Ryanair pilots, and it is a thing that they are telling us. They are fearful of telling they have a fear of their employment if they were to stand up. You know, I have only to look at my extreme right here to convey that message that it's not a given that if you stand up as a Ryanair pilot and that you are a member of the council of Ryanair, that automatically means that you are keeping your employment. I'm not saying that the two are by definition linked, but it's an example, and the perception of the pilots really is that they are now more and more telling us about their problems and their issues. But it's a slow process, and don't forget that many of these pilots have been in a situation for 10, 15 years where they have been unable to tell their stories. And there are very many stories still in the group of Ryanair pilots that are still untold. They're only told to us. But we need to establish relationships with the company, with the regulator, the Irish regulator, to be able to talk about the issues that the Ryanair pilots are facing. So there is fear in the Ryanair pilot group. From my own personal experience, I've seen it. I've been talked about it by Ryanair pilots. And the perception in the group is quite clear. It's unfortunate. I would wish it was not necessary, because then we could be stepping away from our positions and leaving them to Ryanair.
Captain, could I ask Captain Goss a question? I hope you can answer this one. On what grounds were given for dismissing you by Ryanair?
As you can understand.
Microphone, please.
Sorry. Thank you. I forgot that. As you can understand, on the legal advice that I've been given, particularly in relation to this present press conference, that I've been advised not to discuss anything in relation to the court proceedings. So, with your experience, I'm sure that you can understand that.
Just to follow up on this fear issue, given that you were saying that pilots are fearful of standing up, how can you be confident that sooner rather than later this interim council will be replaced by people from the company?
Well, it's definitely a hope I have. You know, things need to change in the relationship between the pilot group and Ryanair first. That is quite clear. And I'm hoping that is the reason why we are taking up the challenge made by the chief executive. And once again, and we have done so already on several issues, we have told the company that we are ready to engage. You know, first thing we need to do is sit around the table and speak about the issues that are present. On the other hand, and the other side of it is, as you all know, we are being sued by Ryanair too. So there's a very tense situation still there. So the time is not right at this moment to ask Ryanair pilots to step up and sit behind this thing.
Do you think, in retrospect, Everett, maybe before I asked that question, just what Paul has asked her to forward it, when do you think the Ryanair pilots will be able to step up to the plate? Can you give a time measurement on it? 3 months, 6 months, a year?
Well, I have to say it's not in our hands.
Okay.
I would like to have it done today. I don't think that is realistic.
Yeah.
It depends on, you know, the new Ryanair, the Ryanair 2.0, the softer, cuddlier Ryanair. If they extend it to their employees as well, or to their pilots at least, it could go very quick, but it could take a while too. You know, this is a project we've been in for 2 years. Where we are now compared to 2 years ago is tremendous. You know, we have a very high degree of organization within the group, even with all the logistical challenges that we are facing. You know, 57 bases. Go and visit all of them. It's almost impossible. But still, we're trying to do it. We're going to organise another run of base visits here very shortly, and we will all be spreading out all over Europe to visit these pilots. So once again, tomorrow, today, we are ready. The company needs to be ready too, and I hope that they will.
Well, the question I was going to ask is, do you accept in hindsight that maybe going on the dispatches program, which I know John can't talk about, maybe attacking Ryanair's safety record, where people came back, according to the newspapers that I've read, very much supporting Ryanair and giving Ryanair the chance to take legal action? It's not exactly the best way of making friends.
It's a good question. It has to be stated here that the Ryanair Pilot Group has never publicly challenged Ryanair's safety record. What we have done, we have talked about the survey that we have done through the Ryanair pilots, which was a reason for concern. But as we said before, we have received legal advice not to discuss the safety issues here. But I would like to clearly state that we have never challenged that safety record of Ryanair. Anybody else?
One more question about the list of traffic. What exactly have the pilots signed up to? Membership of the RPG? Have they gone to one of your meetings? How did you collate that list and what was they actually connected?
Well, remember that I said during the presentation, the Ryanair Pilot Group is a pilot professional association in development. It's a work in progress. We are basically trying to set up the first pan-European pilot professional association. It hasn't been done before. So it's a step-by-step approach. One of the things that you need to form an association is to have a high degree of membership. So that's really where we are now. We have asked the pilots, would you like to join the Ryanair Pilot Group? Please register. We have a very good and fail-safe, we feel, registration process. We are very confident that there are only Ryanair pilots members as registered members of the Ryanair Pilot Group. And from here we will have to take the next steps into really setting up this pan-European organization. We are in the heart of Europe here today. It may evolve into a Belgian or European association. We don't know yet. We are talking with our colleagues in the European Cockpit Association about that. The present status is that we have well over 50% of Ryanair pilots signing up, and that we have asked them several questions. One of them is we discussed the issues and the priorities and the mandate that they have given us, and the priorities of issues that they would like us to take up with the company. So that's the present state of things.
Sorry, me again. Would your group have more credibility, do you think, if it was wider spread, that it wasn't just Ryanair that appeared to be going after that, it was KLM or Air France or whoever else that, I presume everyone has contract pilots and staff pilots.
I disagree. I think very many airlines don't have contract pilots. Contractor pilots is a relatively new development, and especially on the scale that we see in Ryanair. I haven't seen anything like it in any larger scale operation yet, at least not in Europe, in my experience. Would you be able to fit the Ryanair pilots in the existing structures within Europe? I think that would be difficult, because they are very nationally oriented. My own association in the Netherlands is about pilots flying for Dutch airlines. The British Association is one for pilots based and working in Britain. The Ryanair pilots are a totally different kind of group. They are mobile. They are spread out over Europe. As I said, they can be switched from Lithuania to Cyprus in a matter of days. And so we need new structures and new ways of thinking there. And I don't think that the old structures are working for that group of pilots.
I thought I saw reported recently that Ryanair has taken up some form of legal injunction, that it wasn't at all clear what it was going to demand. They just filed one. I assumed that it was to try and silence, meetings like this, for example. Are you aware of what I'm talking about?
Yeah, it's true that Ryanair has initiated an action against all the RPG interim council members. It's too early in the process to go into full details at this stage. It's true there are exchanges of legal positions or letters, but rest assured we will defend ourselves vigorously, and we face this further piece of litigation from Ryanair with some equanimity. It's unfortunate. We would much rather be in a discussion mode with the company based on mutual respect than in legal challenges. That is our clear preference, And we're not the only ones. As I said, there's really a tsunami almost of legal cases around Ryanair, unfortunately, and I regret that. I wish it was otherwise, but it's not. We have to face the facts. Anybody else? Well then, I would like to thank all of you very much for your attendance, and I was really overwhelmed by the amount of people that have showed up. So thank you again, and have a good trip back home or to your workplace and work. Meet again soon. Thank you. Bye.